Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the IIBA, the first IIBA webinar on the Ireland-India business landscape. As you all know, the Ireland-India Business Association is a bilateral business association, and we're trying to focus on what business opportunities there will be and challenges following the pandemic. I'm delighted that we have 4 panelists joining us today. We have Lynch from KPMG. We have Mrs. Radhika Dudat Pereira, as a partner with Shardul Amashand Mangalas. And we have Lorraine Woods from UCD. And we have Dr. Ravi Gupta from Mild Tax Advisors. So we have Delhi, Mumbai, and Dublin on the call today. Welcome, Radhika. I'm sorry that you were slightly late managing to get into this link, but welcome. You are live. We are broadcasting now, and we're delighted that you could join the IIBA. And you're in Mumbai, isn't that right?
Yes, thank you so much for having me over, and apologies because I had some technical problems.
No worries. We are where we are now. So, so to our delegates, we have a Q&A icon in the bottom middle of your screens. If you have questions for the panelists as we proceed, please do write them in there and I will try and capture them. My name is Neelakanti Ford, I chair the IIBA, and I would like to ask Lynch from KPMG to give us his first 5 minutes on what he sees in terms of the Ireland-India landscape.
Hi.
Over to you.
Good day, everyone. Namaste. It is wonderful that we're using technology in this way to interact at this time. I think it'd be great to get back to personal interactions as well, but I think there's a join up there, particularly being able to have people from Dublin, Mumbai, and Delhi on this at the same time and talking as if we're in the same room is just absolutely marvelous. Just a quick overview on where I see and where things are at in Ireland at the moment. And I think some of this is important to understand in the overall context of what we're looking at in the future of the Ireland-India relationship. I was looking at figures today which would indicate that the Irish economy is expected to shrink by about 10% this year and grow by about 7% next year, leaving it kind of literally about 96, 97% by the end of next year. They're the latest projections at the moment, but those projections hide a lot of other things within that. They hide the fact that unemployment in this quarter at the moment, at the end of April, was 28%, which is absolutely massive. Now that's falling already as the reopening starts. The real level of unemployment is expected under the new projections to be somewhere between 10 to 12% during 2021 on average. That is still a huge figure. Investment and private investment in particular in business and that down something like 50%. And that figure, just to put it out there, again, that is a huge figure, but that figure is without the government direct intervention that we expect to happen and which has to happen. We're looking at government deficits of region of 11 to 15 billion this year. But on top of that, looking at another 10 billion of incentives that are needed at the very least into the economy to make sure that we keep this the economy running. And why do I go into that overall sort of figure? So all of that looks absolutely terrible, but it is relatively short term, hopefully. And what we need to look at in the context of that is 2 economies that are going on side by side here. One is the international global economy. And the international global economy, Irish manufacturing has remained open throughout this crisis at all. I'm sure Irish education has remained open, although people are not sitting at desks. Large parts of the economy have remained open, have remained productive. Important part of this, and I think this is an incredibly important part given the trade discussions that are going on, given the questions on globalization of trade and whatever else. Ireland at a time when we've been looking for various products and that were needed in the health sector and whatever else, has stayed open and hasn't interfered at all with global supply lines and the supply chains that are there. And I think this is incredibly important going forward into the future as to where countries sit in the new globalized normal that follows in keeping those supply lines open. And that has been an incredibly important part of keeping manufacturing open generally in Ireland and keeping those cross-border supply lines open. Finance has remained open. The massive Irish finance industry has remained open. Probably the one area that's under significant pressure is the aircraft leasing, given the large part that aircraft leasing plays in Ireland. But when all of the aircraft are sitting on the ground and airlines aren't actually earning any money, leasing payments becomes an issue. That's going to be a question of how quickly that particular sector comes back. And that brings to why are the figures so bad? Well, the figures are so bad because the domestic economy is shut. Retail is shut, restaurants are shut. And we can look at the international manufacturing and the high-skilled jobs as much as we like, but the majority of people work in these jobs, work in the local domestic economy, work in tourism, which is a big area, and that is shut at the moment. That leads to the high levels of unemployment that are coming through on that, and they are the sectors that are most in need and will need government support over the next while to come out of that. And I think that is where the major focus is going to need to be, rather than on the areas which would necessarily impact on the Ireland-India trade. But if we're going to actually come out of this as a country, and I think this is for most countries, is that those particular sectors, those domestic sectors, and those sectors which employ large numbers of people at close quarters will need to be looked at very, very carefully and will need to be supported throughout that. And I think that's where the focus is going to be over the next while, and where the focus needs to be. Because if cash isn't kept flowing in that sector, I think we end up having a much wider problem. And then this is completely different to 2009, which was the financial crisis and whatever else, and where we had to, I like to put it, in 2009, we borrowed to pay for the sins of the past. If we have to borrow now, it's because we have to spend, and we have to spend in order to grow out of this into the future. And if we're not, our economies contract, and we can't pay for the borrowings that we actually have at the moment. So I think kind of we can look at this in a whole new way. And I think some of the lessons from 2009 are being mislearned on this in relation to how we have to pay for this. I think we need to look at this and look at this as we're not paying for sins of the past. We're actually paying to deal with a health emergency and to develop into the future. And this puts us on a new trajectory. And I think that's kind of the future that I see kind of for Ireland within those two economies. And and I'll come back later to, I think Canty has specific questions later, and I have some suggestions on those, on areas where Ireland and India can specifically engage productively over the next few years.
Thank you very much, Liam.